In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Let us pray for all the soldiers who died during many wars. The first, the second, Vietnamese war, everywhere, Iraq, etc. And all those wars where people give their life for peace, for justice. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Mary, seat of wisdom.
Pray for us.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So tonight we have to cover a very important subject, intelligence. How we know. How we can start from this pie to the notion of pie. You know. So it is central because all the rest, all the philosophy depend on that chapter. Depend the position you take. You can be idealistic, you can be realistic, you can be materialistic, and that are the consequence after in the rest of philosophy. Ethics, all that depend on that conception of knowledge. Okay? So, page number 25, first before the break, we studied number 25, the intellection, and after that, we continue with the explanation about how we know. So the first 25.
24, 25.
24, excuse me, 24.
Oh, you missed half the class.
Yes, excuse me. Well, I mixed the two things. Okay, excuse me. I put the senses after the intellect. But normally we begin to know through our senses. So there is a thing, and we try to know how it's possible to start from that thing, which is singular, this cat, material, sensible, I can go through my senses, and arrive to the idea of cat, what is valuable for any cat in the universe from the beginning to the end. So that is the problem that we have to study tonight. So the nature of senses. Our knowledge, according here, I take the position of Aristotle. A position of Aristotle, it is we call it moderate realism. Moderate realism. And that position is also the position adopted by St. Thomas Aquinas. That means my knowledge comes from my sense knowledge. My knowledge comes from the contact with reality outside of me. That means my knowledge is objective. There is an object. There is an object. I oppose here idealist philosopher. They say that my knowledge starts from my mind. And Descartes, for example, Plato. Okay, St. Augustine also. So senses are the immediate principle of sensation. They have an organic structure, organ, tool, in Greek organon means tool, instrument. That is scientifically observable, and they are energized by the power of the soul. Well, here we are in the Thomistic philosophy. Already we accept the existence of the soul. But if I was to teach in a public university, I would not say that at the beginning, only at the end. Okay? So that means there must be a principle animating even my senses. Why? Because if I have a dead man, he has eyes, he has ears, but cannot see, cannot hear. Why? Because there is no principle of life. Principle of life is the soul. Okay? I continue. Both organic structure, organic, organon, I told you. Organon means tool, means instrument. An organ, you know, the organ, when you play music, it is an instrument of music. It's only that. Organ means instrument. And vital power, the soul, the vital power, the soul, both the organic structure, that means my body. My body is made with many senses, many powers, many organs. And my vital power, because if, you know, a dead body has all the organs we have as a living body. It is so true that now we can take the eyes of the dead man, or the heart of the dead man, and the kidneys, and put that on after an accident, for example. Here in my eye, now I have, during this June, I have a partial implantation of cornea. So the Dr. Gilbert took a part of the cornea of the dead person, put that in my eye, so I can see you now. Otherwise, I will see you in the confusion, or not at all. That is a proof. Why? Because I am living. When you take the heart of a dead man, put that on the living man, that continues to live. Because he is animated by the soul of the living man. He was not able to move in the dead man, but he able to move in the living man. That proves what? That proves that life is not attached to the body. There is something above the body, inside the body, which makes the body be active, be living. And we call that the soul. Okay? But some philosophers, some scientists, they use the word enteliki instead. Enteliki. En means in. Telos in Greek means and, finality, finality. And ekin means to have. So to have a finality in. That is interesting, to have a finality in. That is the discovery of some biologists today. Okay? So the existence of senses or external is not difficult. Everybody will study that in the kindergarten. We have senses, 5 senses. Okay? External senses, but their existence does not require any proof. Okay? But I go to the third line. Sensory receptors are anatomically and functionally discernible, and these are specifically affected by different typical stimuli. That means that is the characteristic of my external senses. They are able to attain only one kind of object. For example, my eye, my sight, we attain only color, light, color. My tasting, attain only what is sweet and sour, etc. So every sense has a specific object. So what I see, it is not what I smell. Of course, I know it is, for example, you have a beautiful clerical animal we call a skunk. It's a clerical animal because it is black and white. You can see it, you can smell it, but that is 2 different activities. Okay? So if we have many activities, each sense has its own object, how we can put that together? So here, if that is my senses here, my senses attain the object on different color, sound, taste, etc. And they arrive here. But everyone is different. So how we can arrive to have, for example, you have let's speak about the skunk, okay? A rose is better. Okay, you have a rose. You smell the rose, you see the rose, you touch the rose. In some country, we eat the rose, you know that, huh? If you go to Turkey, in a breakfast, they serve us a rose jam. So we have rose food, and we eat. It's very good, very good. You know, some Italian, they eat dandelion in salad. Why? It's good. It's a creature of God. No? Anyway, so all that is one thing. We need a sense that coordinate, we call that the common sense or the coordinating sense. But why? Because no sense can communicate with another. Because they are determined for one function. So if my eyes and my smell indicate me that there is a danger, it is because there is something making them into union. And that is we call the common sense or the coordinated common sense. Well, I don't like common sense because common sense in English means another word. So, but that is a translation of Latin, sensus communis. Sensus means sensation, common sensation. Okay? Sense common. Okay. So their existence is internal now. Their existence is not obvious, but we can discover the internal senses, that is external senses here. External. Now, the internal senses. We can discover them through deduction. You know? We know that we arrive to know what is a rose, and we can attain the rose through many senses. Therefore, we must have a principle uniting all those sensations into one sensation. We call that, we study that in the future, the coordinating sense. So we have external senses, we have internal senses, and all those activities we study tonight in the they are situated. They are a place in the brain, and we know today where is the place for memory. We can act on that, influence that by medication, by injection, etc. Okay. So because we are animal, and our sensation are linked with our brain. But we don't stop there, because we don't only have the sensation of a skunk, we arrive to the idea of what is a skunk, independently of all the particularity of this or that skunk. Okay? With that flower, excuse me, I prefer flower. But you know, I don't know why I speak about skunk. I know, yes I know. Because in the old chapel, you remember maybe? There was here an old chapel before the new chapel. And that old chapel was, in fact, a shed. During the summer, the employees who came to work, they slept there, and they put their instrument there. And Father Menard, who had no money, he transformed the shed into a chapel. And for about 45 years, they were our chapel. And at the entrance, on the south side, there was a beautiful balcony. And under, there was skunk families. And they were very pious.
Incense.
And you know, their prayer, when they were going out, they said, "Let us pray." No, what is extraordinary, for 60 years, never a skunk powdered with his perfume a seminarian. Never. And they were working with us. Huh? I was saying my rosary, you see the skunk going in the stair, passing. They were used with, in fact, they were clerical, black and white. And that is astonishing. Never, never, never. For years and years and years. Because they were in confidence, you know, they were holy place, and they were very faithful to their spiritual exercise. The chapel, we climbed, they were under, but never we have smelled them. It's interesting.
Maybe they weren't scared, because some people that I know who deal with them said that once you come upon them, you startling.
But you know, sometimes when they leave, we smell them. Never we smell them. During the master, never. But they were there. Oh, they were there. Faithful, seminarian, Scotland. Okay. So we have our senses at first sight they seem passive. For example, my eye receives light, but my eye is not purely passive because it is living. It reacts. So action, reaction. And one of the characteristics of life is motion, is spontaneity. So my eyes to see need something with light and color, but it is not because I have something with color and light that I can see. Dead men have eyes but cannot see. So I react. That is the characteristic of them. They are passive. My senses are passive, but they are not totally passive because they react. It is what we see page 162. So now various stimulus object and receptor object. So we have stimuli on one side, and we have receptor on the other side. But the receptor they react. They are living receptor. They are not passive receptor. So they are passive because they receive, but at the same time they act. Schema we should know all the time in studying philosophy of man is the following: the subject, the act, and the object. That is continual, is the pattern of all psychology, philosophy of man. That being the subject, my I, through my power, my eyes, my ear, my etc. At the contact of the object, there is a reaction, action, reaction, that is knowledge. So knowledge is at the same time a kind of passivity because I receive the form of the object, but at the same time is a reaction to that. It is, we see that in last week we saw that. It is a communion union. International union, you remember that? No, communion is international union. Union of both have a same content. Okay, I continue. Number 24.5. Sensible as object of external sense. Nature. What is sensible? What can modify the sense? So when an object modifies the sense, we call that a stimulus. That it is a sense object, sensible object. Now we have division of sensible. We have the proper sensible and the common sensible. What is the proper sensible? There are, first of all, qualities such as color. So the color is the proper sensible for the sight, for my eye. And the other is the proper sensible for my smelling. Okay? They are capable of specifically stimulating a particular sense. Those sensible belong to the sense as their own immediate or proper sensible. So my five senses has the proper sensible. Because they have the proper sensible, they cannot communicate with the other. My sight, my eyes cannot, by themselves, communicate with my ear. I need another principle of coordination. Okay? The common sensible now. So these qualities exist, however, as property of quantified material reality. For example, I see a train or a truck or a bus coming, you know. So I listen to the noise, I see it coming. When it passes near me, I can feel the vibration. I can smell the gas oil, you know. So all my senses can see the bus coming. So that it is a common sensible. I can see the size of the bus. It's the same for an orange. I can see the orange, can smell the orange, but all that together, I have a common sensible. So thus they are located in space and time, and are subject to movement. For example, a thing in motion, I see a truck, a train, a plane passing in front of me, that is a common sensible, because I can use many senses for the same thing. Okay? So they can estimate, I have many different aspects of the thing are seized, are grasped at the same time, but they are different at the same. I use all those aspects to see something which is common, the common object, the size, for example, and the local movement, the size, the space of the thing, the volume, I can see that, big, large, the duration, etc. So those are something we call common sensibles, because I need many senses to know that. I can use many senses, for example, to know the size of a classroom. Well, I remember when I was young, we have a pianist, he came to our high school, and he gave a concert. And he was able to say, the floor is covered with wax. He was able to give the dimension of the apartment because of his ear. He had my sister-in-law, she does sight, and now we discovered that we can know the dimension of things through hearing. Like bats. Bats, they don't see, but they have a good hearing. So because these can act simultaneously upon many senses and are common to all of them. So when I see a horse passing, running, I see I can see with many senses, many things. Okay. Next page, page 163. So further, Vollmer gave a definition of common sensibility. It says something naturally perceivable, known, perception, by more than one external sense, and primarily by none of them. Not a single one can seize the totality of the thing. For example, I cannot seize only by my eye the size of the thing. I need many things. I need to touch and measure. But it immediately surpasses simple sensation. So perception, perception of this nature and value is made possible by the activity of senses. But it surpasses simple sensation. So when I see, for example, I know that is an orange, I must, the knowledge of the existence of this orange in front of me with my hand is more than the knowledge from one sense. I need many senses to know that. But that is not difficult to understand.
Father, it reminds me, I heard on the radio this morning they're landing a spacecraft or a probe or something on a comet, that they've never landed on a comet before. So they're able to see what the comet looks like. They're able to see mountains and sand, what looks like sand dunes, but they have no idea what it actually feels like. Is it hard? Is it soft? Is it because they haven't landed there yet? But they can see, but they're not sure what it actually feels like until they land on it.
So now they know that because they have not only and in fact, we can know now even the nature of things at this time through color, through spectrogram. We can know there is some kind of gas, some kind of stone, only through the analysis of the spectrum. That means the color of the thing. But we need many senses. But that knowledge, you see, is not perfect because we don't know exactly what is the constituent of the thing. So we know a thing through many senses. That is the conclusion. What is known through many senses, it is what we call the common senses. Okay? So it requires other principles of knowing, such internal senses. And in fact, when we know, what we are doing now, we are analyzing, but we might not forget, never forget that when we analyze our knowledge, in reality, our knowledge is one. When you smell, when you touch, there is no pure sensation. Because when you touch, you cannot refrain your memory or your imagination or your intellect to work. When we are awake, wide awake, we work all the time with our intellect. But to understand better, we divide, sense, external senses, internal senses, but in fact, all those sensations, even there, they are linked with intellect. Of course, we don't express that clearly. If you see an orange, that orange is green, that orange is yellow, or is orange, or red. My senses give me that, but at the same time, at the speed faster than light, my mind says that is orange, is yellow, When we try to distinguish mentally, we don't destroy the unity of the knowledge. We know with all our powers, but we try to distinguish that. Okay? Why we do that? In fact, it is to find the causality in knowledge. The reason is there. And to find the causality in knowledge, because philosophy is the search for causes, we have to analyze. And when a doctor, for example, a physician, a biologist, they study the human being or the being of a mouse, of a guinea pig, then they study one part, but that part, for the kidneys, function with the rest. No? I cannot imagine the kidney functioning independently of the heart. I put the kidney there, and say, okay, function. Put the heart there, function. No, they function together. But to understand better, we divide the thing. Okay? Now the internal senses. They are called such because they contact reality through the intermediate of the external senses. So, Father Wunder said, it is a proper power which uses the images of other senses, for example, the color, the taste, the odor, give immediate sensory knowledge. In fact, we start from what we know through our senses to arrive to a knowledge of the reality. But that knowledge I have here, for example, I have the image of a kangaroo. And there's a kangaroo. I go to Australia, I see kangaroos. I come back to the United States, and the kangaroos are in my imagination, they are in my memory, they are here. But they are here through the mediation of my senses. In fact, we know nothing if first they don't pass through our senses. That is the characteristic of the theory of Aristotle. Nothing in my intellect if first it does not pass through my senses. Nihil in intellectu, nisi prius in sensu. But don't try that in Latin. Nothing in my intellect if first it does not pass through my senses. It is exactly what Descartes opposed. Idealists, they oppose that. They don't accept that. So we discussed that in the after, okay? So to identify them as principle of knowledge, one must investigate the function of sense knowledge that are themselves irreducible to external senses. That means, when I have, for example, the common sense here, common sense, we have to deduce its existence. Nobody knows directly the existence of the common sense. But we know that each sense has its own object. How we can arrive to one unified object? We say there must be an internal sense we call coordinating sense. You know, the knowledge of the internal sense are known through activities. We don't know them directly. I can see my eyes, okay, but I cannot see my imagination. I cannot see my memory. But I know I have imagination. I know I have a coordinating sense. I know I have cogitative for the future because of the effects I see, the activities I see in my life or in the life of animals, sentient animal like a cat or a squirrel. I continue. These functions must be grouped around specific object. Whatever function cannot be referred to the same object, but be required distinct principle of operation. So the coordinating the sensation is not the same as conserving, storing the energy. So there is another function to store, to keep the sensation, and that is the imagination. So imagination is the one who keeps the image. In fact, what happens when I see something, a thing outside of me in time or space, passing through my senses, what coming from that? Well, you know, here we have to go back to the theory of matter and form. For Aristotle, all material things are made with matter and form. And when I know something, when I see the color, does the orange enter with only the form of color? The form of other. The matter stay outside, no? So here I have a species. Well, the word species means picture. It's the technical word in philosophy, scholastic philosophy. Species means image, picture, similitude, representation. So the first time I see a kangaroo, my senses give me many information about kangaroo, and they are coordinating here. And I form a sensible, impressed species of kangaroo. You remember the old Kodak, when you were young. You did not have digital Kodak, you had a digital camera. You have a film, no? A Polaroid or negative. So you have to put the negative. And when you take a picture, tuk, the negative was impressed. That is sensible, impressed species. The first time I see a skunk or I see a kangaroo, a crocodile, or I will, on reality or in image, or because somebody speaks about, for example, the corosal, you remember? The two-headed snake. So that is impressing my internal senses. And that first impression is kept in the imagination. And the imagination has a power to reproduce, to make present, to represent. What is to represent? Is to make present. In that, we call that the phantasm. So the phantasm is the sensible species, but express. Why express? Because you can say that to you. For example, can you represent now in your the house of your father? Can you make a draw? Can you? Yes, you represent. You make present. But if you can make present the image, the sensible species, you can express that. It is first because there was a first impression. So the first impression is the sensible, impressed species. Why sensible? Because it is with color, with other. It is singular. And it is sensible. It is about a material reality, but the matter does not enter, only the form. So singular and sensible. That is a phantasm. pH, not F, pH. That is another example of technical word for scholastic philosophy. We have to learn those things, phantasm. So the phantasm is the image, the reproduction, the representation of the object. Okay? In fact, do you see those images? Can you see the image you have in your mind? You remember what I told you in last class? You see a tree. Do you see the tree on your retina? No. But you see the tree outside through that image. So that image here allows you to see the external object. I can say by analogy, the phantasm here allows you to see the external object. You don't see the phantasm, but you see through the phantasm. When you watch a movie, you see the picture. Do you see the film? No, you see the picture. But you see through, and the object passed through. So, in fact, that here is, we call that a formal sign. Huh? You remember that in logic? Huh? My phantasm, in fact, is a formal sign. That means I know through the phantasm. I don't know the phantasm. How we can speak about that? By deduction. Because we have to say, there must be something, something here. Because after that we have to explain how we abstract. So we have something like here. Nobody can see directly the image on the retina, but everyone sees a thing through that image. If you have no image on the retina, you see nothing. You are blind. And nobody sees that image. We know that through research, through science, through, it's the same for phantasm. Okay, that analogy for me is very, very good. The existence of the phantasm is to indicate the object outside. If you have the image of the barn of your uncle, I remember when I was a boy, the barn of my uncle, I see that here. In fact, I see the reality through that, but I cannot see that here. Like I cannot see the image on my retina. Okay? So,
Can I clarify something, Father?
yes.
So the sensible and impressed species is the combination of all my external senses?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, here, it is the fruit of the synthesis of all those things. Imprinting first in my knowledge, and after that, I store that, I can express that. And when I store here in fact, that should be here, but I put that here, okay? Because I will need that soon. Store, and also I can reproduce also with fiction, transform. And from that store of images, I can go to the past. Yes, the image of the barn of my uncle when I was 6 years old. I remember that. I went with my brother, John, and we opened the barrier, the cars passed. My uncle said, be careful of the ball. Okay. That is memory. Memory is a relation with the past. You imagine, you represent the dog of your grandfather. That is image, imagination. But you see the dog when you came from the school and the dog was running toward you. That is memory. Because it is, you feel the past. You know it is not now, it is in the past. And we can use also the images here for the future. We can prepare the future. In fact, what is experience? Experience is reflection on the past to prepare the future. In that sense, internal sense, using images, we call that for man cogitative. Why? Because cogito means I think. I think, cogito. That means it is my sense knowledge, but enlightened by my intellect. And for animal, we call that estimative. or instinct. In fact, animals have estimative. For example, now a squirrel, what they are doing, they are collecting nuts, putting nuts somewhere, so when they will be hungry, they can feed themselves. Bear is trying to it. He's not a Weight Watcher now. He tried to acquire a lot of fat to be able to pass through hibernation. That is estimative. Men also have instinct. We have instinct. Man has instinct. But his instincts are not purely instinct. They are enlightened by his intellect. So we call that cogitative. But they are instinct. We have the instinct to eat. But we don't eat like my cat, my dog. It is an art, gastronomy. You know, gastronomy. We prepare pies. That is injecting my mind into my instinct. It's the same for sexuality. In every culture, there are laws about sexual instinct. There are the law of marriage, to avoid consanguinity, for example. Those laws are the mind put into the instinct, cogitative. Okay? So that are your imagination. You have that on page 164. To register, to store. Register, to store. It is necessary. Imagination is very, very important in our life. It is necessary for progress, for survival. Even animals, they use their imagination. There are some tests, we see that sometimes. We put something in the labyrinth, and the rat or they try to find their way, you know. Well, that they are not completely, they know, animals, they know. And the more they are developed, the better they know. But they cannot progress. That's the difference between man and animal. Animal cannot progress. He did the same thing 2,000 years ago. He continued to do the same thing. Man progress. Why? Because man has the capacity of reflection. We can reflect on what we did. Because of that, we can prepare the future, we can improve, we can progress. I think, for me, one of the best arguments to prove the intelligence of man and the difference between man and cat and dog, it is that there. Man is continually progressing. I don't say in virtue, but in technology, in the knowledge of things. Imagine progress we did in 50 years, it's incredible. Okay? Because we are intelligent, but we have instinct also. In the danger, we can use our instinct to do evil things. So we can be worse than animal. Animal will not do what we do. I never saw a marriage for two chickens. Excuse me. I must be prudent because... Okay, so necessity of imagination. Imagination is creative. One of the power of imagination is fiction. And those who have imagination with intellect, they are those who invent things. They create something new. You know? Man is able to fly today. Why? Because he has imagination and intellect, both. Okay? So the phantasm is the image produced by the power of imagining. The phantasm is an express species, but be careful, sensible express species. That means I can represent, express, what is express? To say to myself, to express, to say, I can express, represent the thing of I do, I can change them, I can combine them in a new way, etc. That is the role of imagination, and the fruit of that is the phantasm. Okay? Page 165. the role of phantasm. So, apart the role of in sense knowledge, the phantasm supplies a representation. Representation. That means to make a thing present. If I ask you, draw me a kangaroo, you make present to your imagination a kangaroo, and you put that on the paper after, okay, of a concrete reality. Be careful, the phantasm is not for abstracting. It's only for sensible thing. We cannot represent abstraction. Of course, the modern painter, they pretend to do that, but this is not a language very clear. We see square, but the role of the phantasm is to make present the object in the mind, because that phantasm will have a great role in knowledge. We cannot know without a phantasm. That means we need a phantasm. Like you need a pencil to write, you need a phantasm. And we see in your paper, the phantasm is the instrumental efficient cause. The instrumental efficient cause of knowledge. Like a slide in the projector. You know, projector, you need a light and you need a slide or a film. If there is no film, there is no slide, there is no projection. We need that, but it is not the slide itself that produces the spectacle. It is the light passing through. So we need both. When you write, who is writing? What is writing? You write, but your pencil write also. Both you write. Both are writing. One is writing as principal cause, the other is writing as instrumental cause. It is a real cause. In theology, when you study theology, you will see that, for example, the priest, when he celebrates the Mass, who is the principal efficient cause of the transubstantiation?
Holy Spirit.
The Holy Spirit, God, Holy Spirit. But what is the role of the priest? Instrumental cause. The difference between the priest and your pencil is not free, it's not intelligent, and you are free. It's the same for parents when they give life. The parents are the instrumental cause of the generation of their children. God is the first cause, but the parents are and they are responsible. They are co-creators. So the priest also, when he baptizes a child or when he did absolution, he consecrates, he is an instrument, but he is a free instrument. Okay? So here, it's interesting to see that the notion of instrument is analogical. Okay? Now, the imagination sometimes is cause of error. Because why? Because imagination has the power of fiction. Fiction. We can reorganize. It is especially evident in your dream. In your dream, many sensations are put together without any rationality. Okay? So the dream, I spoke about that. Now the cognitive power. So that is sense knowledge. Here is sense knowledge. So we receive from sensation forms. Those forms are coordinated, and they are sent by the coordination to the imagination, which stores them, keep them, and produce the phantasm. That images can be used in relation with the past and in relation with the future. Now we are like, the problem is, how can we pass from sense knowledge to intellectual knowledge? How we can pass from this telephone to the idea of telephone? Everywhere, at every time, since Mr. Graham Bell discovered that. That is the big question. Some philosophers, they stop here. They say, knowledge is only that. And the word we use are only words, nominalism, for example. There is no real concept. There is only materialism, Marxist, for example. Hume. Stay here. Okay? Those, they say, knowledge cannot come from that. Impossible. Knowledge is totally separated. Totally separated. So the intellectual knowledge does not depend on sense knowledge. And those are we call the idealists. Because they say the source of my knowledge is not in the phantasm, the source of my knowledge is in my own mind. Descartes, St. Augustine, Plato. The difference between Descartes, St. Augustine, and Plato is how to explain that I have innate idea. Plato would say because of reincarnation, epitempsychosis. I existed before, now when I see something, yeah, I saw that before, you know. Or it can be only a gift of God. God gave me, He put in me a chip with all memory. He put me the chip of the Britannica dictionary. And now I have everything here. When I see a kangaroo, recognize that. That's the kangaroo because I have the idea of kangaroo. Idealism. The problem is there. And now here, in place here, is the separation of the different current of philosophy. If you are idealist, the consequences are very serious because you become the source of knowledge. If you have the source of knowledge, you have the source of morality. In fact, you play the role of God. And the consequence of that is rationalism and relativism. Everyone is finding in his mind his own idea. But what is funny, how is it possible that God gave you different idea